The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. They sat in floating seats that circled the central platform, watching and whispering. At the center stood Overlord Veth of the Draken Imperium, his scaled body towering over most other species. His yellow eyes swept across the room with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. "The matter is simple," Veth said, his voice deep and cold. "Humanity will surrender the colonies of New Busan, Port Incheon, and Gwangju Station. These worlds contain resources that belong to the Imperium by right of strength." In the human section, Admiral Park Tae-ho sat in silence. He was a man of 60 years, with gray hair cut short and a face that showed no emotion. His officers looked at him, waiting for him to speak, to argue, to fight back with words. But Tae-ho said nothing. He only watched Emissary Torel, a thin creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms, rose to address the council. "The Galactic Council recognizes the Draken claim. Humanity is a minor species. They have been part of our community for only 80 years. The Imperium has been with us for 3,000. We advise humanity to accept these terms." Still, Admiral Tae-ho said nothing. He stood, gave a small bow to the council, and walked out of the hall. His officers followed in confused silence. Overlord Veth laughed. "The humans understand their place." 2 weeks later, the Draken fleet arrived at New Busan. The colony was home to 4.2 million people, families, children, workers, and farmers and teachers. They had built their city on a green world with blue oceans, far from Earth, but still carrying Earth in their hearts. They named their streets after cities back home. They celebrated holidays under alien stars. They believed they were safe. The Drakon gave them 1 hour to surrender. Governor Yoon Min-ho refused. He stood in front of his communications screen and told the Draken commander, "This is our home. We will not leave." The Draken did not wait for the hour to end. From orbit, the warships opened fire. Plasma beams cut through the atmosphere like burning knives. They struck the capital city first. Buildings that had taken 20 years to build turned to ash in seconds. The schools, the hospitals, the parks where children played, all of it burned. Governor Yoon Min-ho died in the first strike. So did his daughter, his son, and his wife. Across the planet, the destruction continued for 6 hours. The Draken were not trying to conquer. They were trying to punish. They wanted the galaxy to see what happened to species that refused them. When it was over, 4.2 million humans were dead. The green world was black and gray. It's covered in smoke and silence. The Draken broadcast images of the destruction to every corner of the galaxy. "Let this be a lesson," Overlord Veth announced. "The strong rule. The weak obey. Humanity has learned this truth today." The galaxy watched. Some species felt pity. Most felt nothing. Humans were a minor species. This was the way of things. But then something strange happened. Earth went dark. All human ships across the galaxy began to withdraw. They left their trade routes, their diplomatic posts, their research stations. They said nothing. They explained nothing. Communication channels that had been open for 80 years went silent. Emissary Toril reported to the council with confusion in his voice. "We cannot reach the humans. All frequencies are blocked. Their ambassador has left the station. Their ships have vanished from our sensors. They're hiding," Overlord Veth said with contempt. "It's like prey animals. They will come back when they are ready to beg." Days passed. Then weeks. The silence continued. Commander San, the Draken military leader who had carried out the attack on New Busan, began to feel uneasy. He had studied humans during the assault. He had seen something in their final transmissions, in the faces of those who knew they were about to die. They had not begged. They had not screamed. They had simply looked at the sky with a strange expression. It took San many nights to understand what that expression was. It was not fear. It was patience. On the 30th day of silence, every communication device in the galaxy activated at once. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic display. All of them showed the same image. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood alone in a dark room. Behind him was the flag of United Earth. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that made even the bravest warriors look away. 30 days ago, he began, his voice quiet and steady. You destroyed New Busan. You killed 4.2 million of our people. Our children. Our families. Our future. He paused. The galaxy held its breath. You broadcast their deaths as entertainment. You laughed. Your council called it justice. Your overlord called it a lesson. Taiho leaned forward slightly. Now hear this. Humanity declares war on the Draken Imperium. Not for territory, not for resources, not for pride. We declare war for one purpose only. His voice dropped to barely a whisper, but it carried across 1,000 worlds. Extinction yours. The transmission ended. In the Galactic Council chamber, there was silence. Emissary Toril stood frozen, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. He had lived for 200 years. He had seen wars and treaties, and the rise and fall of empires. But he had never heard anything like this. A minor species had just declared a war of extermination against one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. In his throne room, Overlord Veth watched the transmission with his commanders. When it ended, he began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling laugh that echoed off the stone walls. They have gone mad, he said. The grief has broken their minds. Prepare our fleets. We will finish what we started. In 6 months, there will be no more humans in this galaxy. His commanders laughed with him. They raised their drinks in celebration of the easy victory to come. But Commander San did not laugh. He stood in the corner, watching the frozen image of Admiral Taiho on the screen. He studied those eyes. He remembered the faces of the humans on New Bus and Patience. That was what he had seen. They had been waiting for something, preparing for something, and now, San realized, with a cold feeling in his chest. The waiting was over. He left the celebration quietly and went to his quarters. He began to review every piece of information the Imperium had on humanity. Their history, their wars, their technology. What he found kept him awake for many nights. Humans were not a peaceful species who had chosen peace. They were a violent species who had learned to control their violence. For 80 years they had smiled and traded and cooperated. They had seemed weak, but they had not been weak. They had been patient, and now Commander San understood. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped being patient. 3 months passed after the declaration. The galaxy watched with amusement, waiting for the quick defeat of humanity. The Draken Imperium had 800 warships. Humanity had less than 200. The math was simple. The outcome was certain, or so everyone believed. Keller Station sat on the edge of Drakon space. It was a military outpost with 50 ships and 10,000 soldiers. The station commander, a veteran named Rosk, spent his days drinking and telling jokes about the coming human extinction. His officers laughed at every joke. Life was good. Victory was coming. Then the sensors detected a single ship approaching. One ship? Rosk looked at the screen with confusion. Just one? The ship was human. It was called the Wrath of Terra, and it moved through space with strange grace, like a predator circling wounded prey. It made no attempt to hide. It came straight toward the station. Rosk opened a communication channel. Human vessel, you are in Draken territory. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. The response came from a woman with short black hair and empty eyes. Her name was Captain Yoon Hannah, and she had lost her father, her brother, and her 2 children on New Busan. She had not slept more than 3 hours a night since that day. She did not need sleep. She ran on something darker. Keller Station, she said, her voice flat and cold. This is the Wrath of Terra. For New Busan, channel closed. Rosk laughed. 1 ship against 50? Destroy her. The Draken fleet moved to attack. 50 warships against 1. They fired their weapons, expecting to see the human ship explode in seconds. The Wrath of Terra did not explode. It moved. No ship in the galaxy could move like that. It danced between plasma beams. It twisted through missile swarms. It seemed to know where every attack would come before it arrived. And then it began to fire back. The first Draken ship died in a flash of white light. Then the second. Then the third. The human weapons cut through Draken shields like they were made of paper. In 30 minutes, half the Draken fleet was burning wreckage. Rusk watched with growing horror. What? What is this? What are those weapons? No one could answer him. 6 hours later, Keller's station was silent. Every ship destroyed. Every soldier dead. The station itself was a broken ring of metal floating in the void. Captain Yoon, Hannah looked at the destruction through her
window.
She felt nothing. This was not revenge. This was just the beginning. Send the message to command, she told her crew. Phase 1 complete. No survivors. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. One human ship had destroyed an entire Draken outpost. 50 ships. 10,000 soldiers. Gone. Emissary Toril demanded answers. He contacted every intelligence source he had, trying to understand what had happened. What he learned made his blood run cold. During the 30 days of silence, humanity had not been hiding. They had been building. For decades, human scientists had developed weapons in secret. They had created technology that they never showed to the galaxy. They had hidden their true strength behind smiles and trade agreements. Dr. Beeknari, the chief weapons scientist, had led a team of thousands. They had built plasma lances that could cut through any known shield. They had designed missiles guided by artificial minds that learned and adapted in real time. They had constructed ships with engines faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and that was not all. General Kim Jun-ho commanded humanity's ground forces. For 40 years, he had trained soldiers in secret facilities on distant moons. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were enhanced, stronger, faster. They wore armor that made them nearly impossible to kill. They felt no fear. They showed no mercy. Toril presented his findings to the Galactic Council. His voice trembled as he spoke. "We made a terrible mistake," he said. "We thought humans were weak because they chose peace. We were wrong. They chose peace because they knew what they were capable of. They did not want to become what they are now becoming." The council members looked at each other with fear. "What should we do?" one of them asked. Toril closed his 4 eyes. "We should pray that they do not look at us next." The council voted to remain neutral. No species wanted to draw the attention of humanity. They would watch from a distance and hope that the storm passed them by in the Draken throne room. Overlord Veth received the news of Keller's station with rage. He swept his arm across a table, sending maps and documents flying. "One ship." He roared. "You were telling me one ship destroyed an entire outpost?" Commander San stood before him, his head bowed. "The reports are confirmed, Overlord. The human technology is ... unexpected." Veth grabbed San by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You told me humans were primitive. You told me they were weak." "I was wrong," San choked out. "We were all wrong." Veth threw him to the floor. "Mobilize everything. Every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon we have. I want 800 warships at the human border within 1 month. We will crush them before they can strike again." San picked himself up and bowed. "As you command, Overlord?" But as he walked out of the throne room, San's mind was racing. He had reviewed the battle footage from Keller Station 100 times. He had studied every move the human ship made, every shot it fired, every decision its captain made. What he saw terrified him. The humans were not fighting with rage. They were not making mistakes born of anger or grief. Every action was calculated. Every attack was precise. They fought with the patience of hunters who had all the time in the world. This was not a war of passion. This was an execution. In the cockpit of his fighter, Lieutenant Kong Ji-ho floated in the darkness of space. He was young, only 25 years old, with a quick smile and faster reflexes. Before New Busan, he had been a racing pilot, flying ships for sport and glory. Now he flew for a different reason. His younger sister had been visiting New Busan when the attack came. She had been 16 years old. She had wanted to be a doctor. Now, she was nothing but ash on a dead world. Jiho looked at his scanner. The Draken Armada was gathering. 800 ships. 50 million soldiers. They thought their numbers would save them. Jiho smiled. It was not a happy smile. Let them come, he whispered to himself. Let them all come. In her laboratory, Dr. Beeknati worked through another sleepless night. Her screen showed designs for new weapons, each one more terrible than the last. She had created the technology that made humanity's vengeance possible. Sometimes in the quiet moments, she wondered if she had built salvation or destruction. Then she remembered the images of New Busan, the burning cities, the bodies of children in the streets. She remembered that the Draken had laughed. She returned to her work. On the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, Captain Yoon Hana received her new orders from Admiral Taiho. The next target was a Draken supply station, then a communication hub, then a shipyard. Piece by piece, they would take the Draken apart. Captain, her first officer said, the crew is ready. Your orders. Hannah looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, her children's ashes floated in the void. She had not been able to bury them. There was nothing left to bury. Set course for the supply station, she said. Maximum speed. The Wrath of Terra turned and vanished into the darkness. Behind it, the wreckage of Keller Station continued to drift, a silent warning to the galaxy. Humanity had awakened. And they were just getting started, 6 months into the war. The Draken Imperium was bleeding. Admiral Park Taiho sat in his command center on Earth, surrounded by screens showing the state of the galaxy. Red dots marked destroyed Draken positions. There were many red dots. More appeared every day. His strategy was simple and terrible. He was not trying to defeat the Draken. He was trying to erase them. Human fleets struck without warning. They hit shipyards where new Draken vessels were being built. They destroyed supply lines that fed Draken armies. They burned communication hubs that connected Draken worlds. They did not fight for territory. They did not capture prisoners. They simply killed and moved on. The Draken had never faced an enemy like this. Their previous wars had been about conquest. You fought. You won. You took what you wanted. But humanity wanted nothing. They did not negotiate. They did not make demands. They simply kept coming. Captain Yoon Hana led the most feared fleet in the human navy. The Wrath of Terra had become a legend. Wherever it appeared, Draken ships died. In 6 months, Hana had destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. Her crew called her the Ghost. The Draken called her something worse. Now she had a new mission. The Draken. Homeworld had a moon called Varkas. On this moon sat the orbital defense grid that protected the entire planet. Without it, the homeworld would be exposed. Admiral Taiho wanted it gone. The defense grid is protected by 300 ships, Hana's first officer reported, and the moon itself has ground batteries that can destroy anything in orbit. Hana studied the tactical display. How long until our support fleet arrives? 6 hours. Too long. Hana stood and walked to the window. We go in alone. Now. Her officer stared at her. Captain, that is suicide, Ohana said softly. That is what they expect. They expect us to be reasonable, to be careful, to be afraid. She turned to face her crew. But we are not afraid. We have nothing left to lose. And that makes us the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. How? The Wrath of Terra dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above Varkas. The Draken defenders were caught by surprise. They scrambled to respond, but Hana was already moving. Her ship dove toward the moon's surface, dodging plasma fire and missile swarms. The ground batteries opened up, filling the sky with death. Any other captain would have retreated. Hana flew faster. She reached the central control facility and fired everything she had. The building exploded in a ball of fire. Then the secondary facility. Then the tertiary. One by one, the ground batteries went silent. Above, the orbital defense grid lost power. Satellites that had protected the Draken homeworld for 1,000 years. went dark. Hannah pulled her ship up and out of the atmosphere. Behind her, the moon of Varkus was burning. Around her, confused Draken ships tried to regroup. All ships, she broadcast on an open channel. The defense grid is down. The homeworld is exposed. For New Busan, support fleet arrived 2 hours early. Admiral Taiho had sent them ahead, knowing that Hannah would find a way. The battle above Varkus lasted 12 hours. When it ended, the Draken defense fleet was destroyed. The moon's facilities were ruins. And the Draken homeworld looked up at a sky that could no longer protect them. But humanity did not attack the homeworld. Not yet. They wanted the Draken to see them coming. They wanted them to feel the fear that the people of New Busan had felt. This was not just war. This was psychological destruction. Before every attack, human ships broadcast a transmission. It contained 4.2 million names. Every human who had died on New Busan, every man, woman, and child. The transmission took hours to complete. The Draken were forced to listen to every single name. Dr. Beeknari had designed something even more cruel. A virus that infected Draken communication systems. It replaced all transmissions with images from New Busan. Everywhere the Drakon looked, they saw the faces of the dead. They could not escape it. They could not forget what they had done. Draken soldiers began to break. Some refused to fight. Some took their own lives. Others simply sat and stared at nothing, their minds destroyed by guilt and fear. Commander San tried one final desperate attack. He gathered his remaining loyal troops and struck at a human position on a contested world. General Kim Jun-ho was waiting for him. The battle lasted 3 days. San threw everything he had at the human lines. His soldiers charged again and again, dying by the thousands. But the humans did not retreat. They did not bend. General Junho stood at the front lines with his enhanced soldiers, cutting down Draken warriors like they were nothing. On the 3rd day, San's army was gone. He stood alone on a field of bodies, his weapon empty, his armor broken. General Junho walked toward him slowly. "Surrender," San said, dropping to his knees. "I surrender. Please, end this." Junho stopped in front of him. His face showed no anger, no hatred, just empty determination. "I accept your surrender," Junho said. "You will be taken prisoner. You will watch what happens next." San looked up with desperate hope. "Then you will make peace? You will stop." Junho was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his words were like ice. "You haven't lost enough yet." San was taken away in chains. He would live to see the end of his people's empire. That was his punishment. Emissary Toril made one last attempt to stop the destruction. He traveled in secret to Admiral Taiho's flagship and requested a meeting. Taiho agreed to see him. They sat across from each other in a small room. Toril noticed that there were no decorations, no comforts, just gray walls and hard chairs. This was a ship built for one purpose. Admiral Toril began. "The Draken are willing to surrender. Completely, unconditionally they will give you everything, territory, resources, reparations. They will punish those responsible for New Busan. They will do anything you ask." Taiho listened in. "Silence, please," Toril continued. "I am begging you, on behalf of the entire galaxy, accept their surrender. Stop this war. Show mercy." Taiho finally spoke. His voice was calm and quiet. "Okay, emissary, do you know what I did for 30 years before I became an admiral?" Toril shook his head. "I was a teacher. I taught history to children. I believed that if we understood the past, we could build a better future. I believed in peace, in cooperation, in the family of intelligent species working together." Taiho leaned forward. "Then the Drakon killed my grandchildren. They were on New Busan visiting their mother. My grandson was 6 years old. My granddaughter was 4. They burned to death while the galaxy watched and did nothing." Toril could not meet his eyes. "The Draken can surrender," Taiho said. "We will not accept." This was never about winning, emissary. This was never about territory or resources or pride. This is about teaching the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. He stood and walked to the door. The lesson is simple. Never touch our children. Toral was escorted off the ship. He returned to the Galactic Council with empty hands and a heavy heart. There will be no peace, he reported. Humanity has made their choice. We can only watch and remember. In his throne room, Overlord Veth received reports of another fallen fleet. His hands trembled as he read the numbers. Ships lost. Soldiers dead. Worlds gone silent. 6 months ago, he had laughed at humanity's declaration of war. He had called them mad. He had promised to exterminate them. Now his empire was crumbling. His people were dying. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. For the first time in his long life, Overlord Veth felt true fear. And somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their advance, patient, unstoppable, unforgiving. 1 year had passed since the burning of New Busan, the Draken Imperium, which had ruled 1,000 worlds for 3,000 years, now existed only on their homeworld. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the planet below. It was a beautiful world covered in red forests and silver oceans. Billions of Draken lived there. Soldiers, workers, families, children. He felt nothing, too. 100 human warships surrounded the planet in a perfect ring of steel. They had been there for 30 days. No ship had been allowed to leave. No supplies had been allowed to enter. The blockade was absolute. Inside the planet, the Draken were beginning to starve. Tae-ho had given no terms, made no demands, sent no communications. He simply waited and watched, and let the people below understand what was coming. Captain Yoon-hana stood beside him. In 1 year, she had become the most decorated officer in human history. She had destroyed more enemy ships than anyone could count. She had led impossible missions and survived every one. But she had not smiled once. The woman who had loved music and gardens and her children's laughter was gone. Only the ghost remained. Admiral, she said, the Draken are sending another surrender request. Deny it. They are offering Overlord Veth himself. They will execute him publicly if we wish. Tae-ho turned to face her. Do you want that? Would watching him die bring your children back? Hannah was silent for a long moment. No, she finally said. Nothing will bring them back, and their surrender means nothing to me. Tae-ho returned his gaze to the planet. Let them wait. Let them understand. On Earth, the war had changed humanity. For the first year, everyone had supported the fight. The images of New Busan were burned into every human mind. Vengeance had seemed right, necessary. But now, 1 year later, some began to question. Protesters gathered in cities across Earth. They held signs that read, "Enough is enough, and mercy is strength." They argued that humanity had won. The Draken were broken. There was no need for more death. Dr. Beeknari was asked to speak at a public gathering. She stood before a crowd of thousands, her face tired and old beyond her years. You want mercy, she said. I understand. Mercy is a beautiful thing. It shows that we are better than our enemies. It shows that we have not lost our humanity. She paused. But let me ask you something. When the Draken burned New Busan, did they show mercy? When they killed our children and broadcast their deaths as entertainment, did they show mercy? When the galaxy watched and did nothing, did anyone show mercy? The crowd was silent. The Draken taught the galaxy that might makes right, that the strong can do whatever they want to the weak, that minor species can be slaughtered without consequence. Nara's voice grew harder. We are teaching a different lesson. We are teaching them that there are consequences, that you cannot kill our children and walk away. That humanity remembers. She looked out at the crowd. Mercy is for those who deserve it. The Draken do not deserve it. It's not yet. Not until every species in this galaxy understands. Never again. The government held a vote. The result was close, but the majority chose to continue the blockade. Earth had not finished teaching its lesson. On the Draken homeworld, billions waited for death. Overlord Veth sat alone in his throne room. The great hall that had once hosted celebrations and ceremonies was empty now. His advisors had fled. His commanders had surrendered. His people looked at him with hatred in their eyes. He sent a personal message to Admiral Taiho, not a surrender request, not a political communication, just words from one leader to another. Admiral, I know you will not accept our surrender. I know you will not show mercy, but I want you to understand something. What happened on New Busan was my decision, mine alone. My people followed orders. They did not choose this war. I did. He paused, gathering his thoughts. If you want blood, take mine. I will come to your ship alone. You can execute me however you wish. Broadcast it to the galaxy if you want. Just spare my people. They do not deserve to die for my mistakes. The response came 3 hours later. It was from Admiral Taiho himself. Overlord Veth, I received your message. I will give you my answer in person. Prepare for landing forces. Veth closed his eyes. So it would end in battle after all. He had hoped foolishly that his sacrifice might mean something. But humanity did not want sacrifice. They wanted extinction. He picked up his weapon and went to meet his fate. Lieutenant Kong Ji-ho led the first wave through the planet's atmosphere. His fighter screamed through clouds of red and gold surrounded by hundreds of other ships. Below, the Draken capital city spread out like a map of despair. The remaining Draken defense forces rose to meet them. They were old ships and tired soldiers, fighting not to win, but to die with honor. Ji-ho cut through them without hesitation. His weapons sang. His ship danced. 1 year ago, he had been a racing pilot who flew for fun. Now he was something else. Something harder. Something that scared him sometimes in the quiet moments between battles. But then, he remembered his sister's smile. He remembered the day she told him she wanted to be a doctor. He remembered that she was ash now, floating in the void of a dead world, and he stopped being scared. The human forces landed outside the capital city. General Kim Jun-ho led the ground assault personally. His enhanced soldiers moved through the streets like ghosts, taking position after position with terrible efficiency. The Draken soldiers fought bravely. They knew they were going to die, but they refused to run. Some threw down their weapons and waited for death. Others charged at human lines in final desperate attacks. It made no difference. They all died the same. Captain Yoon Hana led the assault on the Imperial Palace. She had requested this mission specifically. She wanted to be there at the end. The palace guards fought hard. They were the best the Draken had, warriors who had trained since birth to protect their overlord. But they were facing the ghost and her soldiers. They did not last long. Hannah moved through the palace halls, stepping over bodies. She felt like she was walking through a dream, or maybe a nightmare. She could not tell any more. She found Overlord Veth in the throne room, standing alone with his weapon raised. He was tall and terrible, his scales gleaming in the dim light. Around him lay the bodies of his final guards. Captain Yoon Hana, he said, I know who you are. I know what I took from you. Hannah stopped 10 meters away. Her soldiers spread out around her, weapons ready. You killed my father, she said. My brother. My husband. My son. My daughter. My children were 5 and 7 years old. Veth lowered his head. I know. I gave the order. I watched the bombardment. I laughed when your world burned. Why? The question seemed to surprise him. He thought for a moment before answering. Because I could. Because the galaxy had taught me that might makes right. Because no one had ever stopped us before, so I believed no one ever would. He looked at her with something like respect. I was wrong. And now my people will pay for my arrogance. Hannah raised her weapon. Her finger touched the trigger. She thought of her children. She remembered their faces, their voices, their laughter. She remembered holding them when they were babies, watching them grow, dreaming of the lives they would live. All gone. All ash? Any last words? She asked. Veth met her eyes. Just this. I deserve what is coming. But please, when you have finished with us, let the lesson end. Do not become what we were. The galaxy does not need another Draken. Hannah pulled the trigger. Overlord Veth, ruler of the Drakon Imperium, fell dead on the floor of his ancestors. Outside the palace, human soldiers lowered the Draken flag. In its place, they raised the flag of United Earth. It flew in the red wind of an alien world. Above the ruins of an empire that had thought itself invincible, across the galaxy, every species watched in silence. The lesson had been delivered. Now they would see if the galaxy had learned. 5 years had passed since the end of the war. The Draken Imperium no longer existed. It had been erased from the map of the galaxy like a stain wiped clean. The 1,000 worlds they once ruled were now independent, or claimed by other species. Their military was disbanded. Their government was gone. Their proud history was reduced to warnings in the records of other civilizations. The Draken themselves were not extinct, but they were broken. Millions lived in refugee camps on distant worlds, depending on the charity of species who had once feared them. They worked the lowest jobs. They kept their heads down. They taught their children to never speak of the old empire. Some in the galaxy called it justice. Others called it genocide. Humanity called it necessary. On the anniversary of New Busan, Admiral Park Tai-ho stood before a memorial on Earth. It was a simple thing. A wall of black stone, stretching for kilometers, carved with 4.2 million names. Every human who had died that day was remembered here. No one would ever forget them. Tai-ho was 70 years old now. His hair was white. His face was lined with age and exhaustion. The fire that had burned in his eyes for so long had dimmed, though it had not died completely. He suspected it never would. He walked slowly along the wall, reading names. Some he recognized. Old friends. Former students. A young woman who had once asked him to sign her history book. A little boy who had wanted to be a pilot. His grandchildren were here too. Park Suman, age 6. Park Yuna, age 4. He stopped at their names and stood in silence. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I am sorry I could not protect you. I hope what we did brought you peace." There was no answer. There never was. Captain Yoon Hannah stood nearby, watching him. She was 45 now, still young by human standards, but her eyes belonged to someone much older. She had retired from the military after the war. She could not bear to command ships anymore. Every time she looked at space, she saw burning worlds. She had tried to rebuild her life. She had bought a small house by the ocean. She had planted a garden. She had done all the things that normal people did, but she still did not smile. The ghost had gone, but the ghost remained. Dr. Beeknari watched from the crowd. She was an old woman now, her back bent and her hands shaking. She had created the weapons that made humanity's vengeance possible. She had designed the tools of destruction that had brought an empire to its knees. Some nights, she dreamed of the Draken homeworld. She dreamed of the children who had starved during the blockade. She dreamed of families huddled together in darkness, waiting for death that came slowly and cruelly. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself the Draken had done worse. She told herself that humanity had no choice. But in her dreams, the faces of the dead did not care about her excuses. Emissary Toril addressed the Galactic Council for the last time. He was old now, even by his species' long standards. This would be his final speech before retirement. "Let the record show," he said, his voice thin but steady, "what happened when humanity was provoked. Let every species in this galaxy remember. Let every generation that follows learn this lesson." He paused, looking around the great hall. Representatives from 100 worlds looked back at him. Humans are not the strongest species. They are not the oldest. They are not the most advanced. But they are the most dangerous. Because they remember. They always remember. He raised one of his 4 arms and pointed at the assembled delegates. "Do you know what the greatest mistake of the Draken was? It was not attacking New Busan. It was believing that humans would forget, that they would move on. That time would heal the wound." He shook his head slowly. "Humans do not forget. They do not forgive. They carry their pain like a weapon, and they pass it down to their children and their children's children. 1,000 years from now, Humans will still remember New Busan. They will still remember what was taken from them. And if anyone threatens them again, he'll let the sentence hang in the air. So here's my advice to every species in this galaxy. Be their friend. Trade with them. Learn from them. Welcome them as partners and allies. But never, ever be their enemy. And whatever you do, never touch their children. The council listened in silence. No one disagreed. General Kim Jun-ho had retired to a small farm on Mars. He spent his days growing vegetables and watching the red sunset. He did not miss the war. He had done what was needed, and now he wanted peace. Sometimes young officers came to visit him, asking for advice or stories of the old days. He always turned them away. He did not want to talk about what he had done. He did not want to be reminded. But he kept one thing from the war: the surrender chip of Commander San. It sat on his shelf. A small piece of metal that had once belonged to an enemy. San had died in a refugee camp 2 years after the war, old and broken and forgotten. Junho looked at the chip sometimes and wondered what San had thought in his final moments. Had he understood? Had he accepted? Or had he died hating humanity for what they had become? Junho did not know, and he was not sure he wanted to Captain Kong. Jiho commanded his own ship now. He was 30 years old, a respected officer with a bright future. The racing pilot who had once flown for fun was gone. In his place was a warrior who had seen too much death and carried too much pain. His ship was on patrol near the outer rim when they encountered a convoy of Draken refugees. A dozen small ships packed with families trying to find a new home. Jiho's first officer looked at him. "Sir, orders." The Draken ships were powering down their weapons. They were broadcasting surrender signals. They were not fighting. They were just waiting. Waiting to see what humanity would do. Jiho thought about his sister. He thought about New Busan. He thought about all the rage and grief that had driven him for 5 years. Then he thought about what Overlord Veth had said before he died: "Do not become what we were. Let them pass," Jiho said quietly. His crew looked at him in surprise. "Sir, let them pass." Jiho kept his eyes on the convoy. "They are not our enemies. Not anymore. They are just people trying to survive." The human ship moved aside. The Draken convoy passed without incident. On the lead refugee ship, a young Draken child watched through the window as the humans let them go. She did not understand why. Her parents had told her that humans were monsters, that they destroyed everything they touched, but the monster had let them live. She would remember that moment. For the rest of her life, a century later, a new species made first contact with the Galactic Council. They were young and eager, full of questions about the galaxy and its inhabitants. They asked about the different species, the history, the politics. Eventually, they asked about humans. The council elder who answered them was very old and very wise. He had lived through the war. He had seen what humans could do. Humans, he said slowly, are complicated. They can be kind and generous. They build beautiful things. They create art and music and poetry. They laugh and love and dream. He paused, but they also remember every wrong done to them, every pain inflicted on them. They carry it like a fire in their hearts, passed down through generations. Most of the time, the fire sleeps. Most of the time, humans are peaceful. He leaned forward. But if you wake the fire, if you hurt them badly enough, they will burn everything to the ground, and they will not stop until there is nothing left to burn.
Oh.
The young species listened with growing unease. "What should we do?" they asked. "How do we deal with humans?" The elder smiled sadly. "Be their friend. Learn from them. Trade with them. Invite them to your celebrations. Welcome their ships to your ports. And if you ever have a disagreement, talk to them. Negotiate. Compromise. Do whatever it takes to find peace." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars, because if you make them your enemy, if you provoke them, if you hurt their children, he turned back to face the newcomers, and the galaxy will watch you burn. just as they watched the Draken, and no one will lift a finger to save you. Because everyone knows the lesson now. Everyone remembers. Young species nodded seriously. They would remember this warning. They would pass it to their children. They would never forget, and deep in space. Human ships continued their patrols, watching, waiting, remembering the fire slept, but it never went out.